Good morning. So today's topic is getting started with Python. In the last class we learned about the computational thinking. This is the same chapter, computational thinking and getting started with the Python. Okay. So basically today we'll go for the introduction part of Python or history of programming languages and Pythons. Okay. So the first thing, what do you mean by a programming language? The programming language is nothing than a medium of communication between the user and the computer itself. That means it's a medium using which we can let the computer to know what to do, how to do, and what will be the calculation done by the computer. That means each and everything those a computer will calculate or a computer will process, that must be given through some commands or instructions, and these instructions are given through your programming language. There are different kind of programming languages like C, C++, Java, Python, and many more programming languages are there. Okay, but we are going to learn about the programming language Python. Okay, so the Python programming language was invented in 1991 at National Research Institute of Mathematics and Computer Science, Netherlands. It has been developed in Netherlands. Okay, before the Python programming language, many other programming languages are high-level programming languages were used like C and C++ from the 17th decade it has been started. But Python is invented by Guido von Rossum in 1991. So what are the features of Python, so that nowadays we are going to learn about Python, or we are doing programming in Python nowadays from 1991 to nowadays, that is around 40 years we are using the same programming language Python. Okay, so the features of Python is, these are the four features of Python. The first one is interpreted programming language, interactive programming language, object-oriented programming language, and it's a high-level programming language. So first come to the first point, that is interpreted programming language. Okay, previously I told you about three different kind of language processor: assembler, compiler, and interpreter. Okay, where assembler is used to convert assembly language to machine language, compiler and your interpreter both are used to convert a high level programming language to machine language. The difference is that the interpreter will interpret or translate the program instruction wise, whereas the compiler will transmit it from the whole program at once. So the Python is an interpreted programming language. That means it use interpreter for conversion or for translation of the programming language into machine code. Okay, that means after writing each instruction is separately converted into machine language and executed. The second point is interactive. Interactive in the means it is very much easier to communicate with the system. That means a command you have written will be directly executed by the Python. That means either you can execute the total program at a time, or you can execute an individual instruction and then another instruction, then another instruction. Likewise also you can execute in Python. The third thing is the object-oriented programming language. The object-oriented programming language is a very useful concept in the world of programming. Okay, in which the first advantage it is the program written in object-oriented programming is reusable. Reusable in the sense, once the program is developed or once the program has been designed, it can be used many times with different set of data. That means if you are changing the data, then you can use the program many times as much of time you want to execute. For example, in the last class I told you about finding the sum of a number 1 to 20, and we have find out some pattern matching. We have do some pattern recognition, in which we have a formula that the sum equal to n plus 1 into n by 2. Now each and every time you are putting a new value of n, you will get a new result. That means the same program can be used for different values of different data. So this concept is known as object-oriented concept. The another merit of object-oriented concept is that in this kind of programming language, the instruction are less important than the data. That means we are putting focus on the data, we are putting interest on the data, and the instructions are surrounding by the data. That means the main concept or the main component of the programming is the data. The instructions are surrounding by the data, and the instructions are used to evaluate the data in case of an object-oriented programming language. And the next thing is a high-level programming language. You all of you know about the high-level programming language. It is more user-friendly and less system-friendly or less machine-friendly. That means this kind of programming language is very much easier to understand by the programmer or user, but it is difficult to understand by the computer directly. Unlike the other programming languages like C or C++. Okay, the level of high level is higher of in case of Python than C and C++. That means the C and C++ have some direct attack attached with the machine, but the Python is not directly attached with the machine. So these are the features of Python programming language, so that it can be used from 1991 to nowadays 2020, around 39 or 40 years we are using the same programming language, Python. Now come to the advantages of Python. So the first advantage is free and open source. Okay, free and open source, from the name itself it can be understood that it is free for use. That means without paying a single penny you can use Python programming language. It can be downloaded freely, or it can be edited, or it can be updated or changed freely by any user without using a single coin. So this concept is known as free and open source. The second is simple language. As I told you in the future, it is high level programming language, and in case of Python it is more easier than Java or C++ or C programming language. That means the instructions of Python is more English type language, and it can be understood by the user very easily. That's why the Python is also known as the beginner's programming language. That means any person who is a beginner, who is do not have any idea about programming language, he can also learn the programming language Python. Okay, the third thing is the object oriented. I have already explained the object oriented. That is, the program can be reused, or the data has more emphasized than the instruction. The next concept is a platform independent. It is a very important concept, that is platform independent. In case of platform, the platform here denote the operating system. As we know, we have different kind of operating system, and different computers are using different kind of operating system. Now suppose someone is using Windows, someone is using Unix, someone is using Linux, Macintosh, BOS, or any kind of operating system. The Python program is machine independent or platform independent, or that is not depending upon any kind of operating system. That means, suppose you developed a program in Python in a computer having Windows operating system. Now after interpretation of the program, you have the executable file. I already told you the process of interpretation and compilation, how we will develop a executable file. So after interpretation, when we have the executable file, the same executable file can be run on Windows platform or Windows operating system, even in Mac operating system, that is Macintosh operating system, or Linux operating system, or any other operating system, you can run the same program. That concept is known as a platform independent operating system. Then the last advantage is huge library. Here the term library, the library is nothing than a simple code or a small programs that the programming language already have inside its system or inside its package. So that for writing so many commands or so many functions we are going to use repeatedly in programming language, for which the library is used. That means some programs are already written and stored in the library that can be used in our program. Instead of writing those programs repeatedly, we can just use that library function or that library program in our program, which will make the programming easier. Okay, so the Python has a huge library as compared to your C or C++ or Java. The Python has a huge library. That means many concepts are already stored or already developed and designed and stored in the Python library. You can just use those programs or function in the library. Okay, now if there is advantages, there must be some disadvantages. So the first disadvantage of Python is its speed. It considerably slower than C, C++ and Java. That means if you are writing a program in C++ or C, then you are executing the program, then maybe that program will be executed faster than the program which is developed in Python. Okay. The second is mobile development. Nowadays it is a most important thing, that mobile applications. Okay, the programming language, earlier days what happened, the programming languages are used to develop software only or web applications, whether we are developing software or web applications. But nowadays in this era we are using mobile and mobile application more than the softwares. But in this case the Python is lacking, or the Python is not so capable of developing the mobile application. What is the reason behind that, I will tell you later. Okay, then the memory consumption. As compared to this programming language, the memory consumption, that means the uses of memory in case of Python is more than the memory consumption of C, C++ or Java. That means what happens, suppose for a simple program in which you are going to store two values and we are finding the sum of two values. It's a very simple thing. For that, in case of Java or C++, maybe we are using 3 bytes or 4 bytes of memory space for storing the information or storing the data. Okay, what is the difference between data and information? The data is the raw fact, the information is the processed data. When the data goes through any kind of calculation or processing, then it will become some meaningful information. Before the processing, it is known as the data. So in case of Python or in case of Java or C++ like programming languages, what happens, for storing 2 or 3 values we hardly need 2 bytes or 3 bytes of memory space. But in case of a Python, we may need 10 to 20 bytes of memory space. So when we are doing our larger programming Python, then it consumes a huge amount of memory. That is a major demerit or major disadvantage of your Python operating system, and that is the reason why the mobile application is not feasible in case of Python operating system. Because in case of mobile application, what we want to do, using a small memory or a small package, we should develop many applications. That is not possible in case of a Python operating system. Next is the runtime error. It is also a major problem in case of Python. Okay, runtime error in the sense, unlike other programming languages like C, C++, they are using compiler. Okay. So what happen in case of compiler? Suppose we have written 50 line of code. What happen? All the 50 lines are converted and tested, then the program will be executed. But here what happen, in case of the same 50 line of code you have written in Python, then what happen? The first code, the first instruction has been converted and executed. Then the second, then the third, then the fourth. So at the time of execution there may be a chance of occurring error. This is known as runtime error, which is not appear so much oftenly. It is not appear in case of C, C++, Java, but there is a chance for appearing online runtime error in case of Python programming language. So these are the features, advantages and disadvantages of Python. In the next class we'll go to learn about the Python platform of the Python IDE. What is Python IDE and how can you write down the commands in Python. Up to that, thank you for listening and have a nice day.